You think the storm comes before the shift, but what if it arrives right after the light breaks through? There is a sacred moment in every transformation where fear doesn't whisper, it roars. Not at the start, when you're unsure, hesitant, or even skeptical. No, fear becomes loud right after something divine moves within you. After the prayer that softened your heart, after the vision that lit a fire in your soul, right after the veil lifts and you realize, I'm no longer who I was. Just as you begin to feel aligned with your higher purpose, when your spirit whispers, yes, this is the path. A familiar discomfort returns. The body tightens, the thoughts accelerate. The mind begins to ask questions it didn't dare ask before. What if I'm wrong? What if I fall again? What if nothing changes? It feels like you're regressing, as if the clarity you received moments ago is slipping through your fingers. But let me say this clearly. You are not falling behind. You are crossing a threshold. What you are experiencing is not spiritual failure. It's the divine friction between two realms of identity, the old you being unraveled and the new you being formed. It's the trembling of your soul, shedding outdated codes of survival and trying to breathe in a new atmosphere of truth. This is where many retreat, not because they aren't ready, but because they mistake spiritual labor pains for misalignment. They interpret the tension as a sign to turn back. But spiritually, this is birth. You are not broken, you are being reassembled. Here's the paradox no one talks about. The moment you come closest to divine alignment is often the same moment your nervous system cries out the loudest. Not because you're off track, but because you are departing from everything your body once called safe, even if that safe was small, fearful, or unworthy. This is what Scripture refers to as the renewing of the mind. Not a gentle walk, but a burning away. Not comfort, but consecration. You are not just making a new decision, you are becoming a new vessel. So when fear comes knocking right after clarity, don't rush to shut the door. Sit with it. Look it in the eye and say, you are not my master. You are the echo of who I used to be, and I bless you, for you are proof that I am no longer living there. This is the beginning of holy alignment, not the absence of fear, but the presence of courage. The war isn't between good and evil. It's between the self you remember and the self you're becoming. Most people believe that when they're truly aligned with divine purpose, everything will feel peaceful, smooth, blissful. But that's not always true. In fact, the closer you come to your God-given expansion, the louder the resistance inside your body becomes. This resistance is not sin, it's not sabotage, it's survival. The body was designed to protect you. Your nervous system, your hormones, your muscle memory, they're loyal not to your dreams, but to your past. They interpret anything unfamiliar, even holy, as unsafe. This is the paradox of transformation. While your spirit rejoices at the threshold of a new timeline, your biology panics. It doesn't know the difference between danger and destiny. It only recognizes disruption. You pray for abundance and your chest tightens. You visualize freedom and your jaw clenches. You declare healing and your stomach knots up. This is not a failure of faith. It is a sign that you are crossing spiritual territory your body has never walked before. And like a traveler adjusting to a new altitude, your system needs to recalibrate. This recalibration isn't instant. It's a process. It's what Paul described as the groaning of the flesh while the spirit ascends. And in modern language, it is the tension between your subconscious programming and your conscious choice. Here's what you must understand. Your nervous system is not resisting your dream. It's responding to a lack of familiarity. Like a child clinging to a fading nightlight, your body reaches for what it knows: certainty, patterns, repetition, even if those things kept you in suffering. It's the same reason a prisoner, after years in captivity, can feel anxious in open fields. Freedom feels unsafe when you've only known cages. Love feels risky when you've only known survival. Expansion feels like danger when your nervous system is trained to find safety in limitation. This is where many people stop. They think, if I feel fear, I must be out of alignment. But the truth is the opposite. The fear is evidence of movement. It's a sacred tremble. It's the sound of walls collapsing, of inner software being rewritten. Your subconscious is being asked to serve a new master, not the master of fear, but the master of faith. In these moments, emotional regulation becomes a spiritual practice. You are not just calming yourself. You are reteaching your body what peace feels like. You are introducing your breath to trust. You are rewiring your biology to carry the vibration of your destiny. Joe Dispenza says, "Your body responds to your thoughts as if they were real events." That means your body doesn't know you're not actually being chased by a lion. It reacts the same way whether you're running for your life or imagining failure. That's why staying present during fear is powerful. Because presence is proof of dominion. So when the shaking begins, when your old identity screams for you to come back, don't run, don't numb, don't override. Place your hand over your chest and whisper to yourself, I know this feels new. I know this feels unsafe, but we are not in danger. We are just growing. You are not betraying your biology. You are baptizing it into a new timeline. What if fear isn't pushing you away from God's plan, but pointing you toward it? We've been taught that fear means something is wrong, that when we feel resistance, unease, or doubt, we've somehow stepped out of alignment. But that's not always spiritual truth. Sometimes fear is not a sign of misdirection, it's a sign of departure. Departure from what? From smallness, from bondage, from identities that were never authored by God. When you begin to shift into your higher timeline, the one your spirit has already seen, but your body is just now learning to trust, fear doesn't mean you've gone astray. It means you're moving. It means the old framework is crumbling and your nervous system is feeling the aftershock. This fear isn't random. It's patterned. It arises in the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. The enemy would love for you to mistake this friction for failure. He wants you to interpret every shake as a warning, every inner tremor as danger. But that's not divine intelligence. That's conditioning. And you are not called to live by reaction. You are called to live by revelation. Fear is not your enemy. It's your indicator. Just like pain lets you know a bone is healing, fear can be the sensation of your soul outgrowing an old shell. It's the residue of the familiar being dislodged by divine possibility. Paul said, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." But he never promised the renewal would be painless. Here's the truth. The stronger the calling, the more your flesh will protest. The higher the elevation, the more your ego will tremble. But trembling is not a stop sign. It's a sign of holy traction. You don't need to force yourself into peace. You don't need to pretend the fear isn't there. You simply need to stay with it, without becoming it. Sit beside your fear like Christ sat with the broken. Observe it without judgment and tell it gently, "You are welcome here, but you do not lead here." That is the spiritual difference. Not that fear disappears, but that it loses its authority. You're not being sabotaged by darkness. You're being summoned to integrate what was once unloved. As you begin to rise, something strange may happen. You start stepping into love, and suddenly, shame whispers. You speak abundance, and scarcity echoes. You move toward freedom, and guilt surfaces like a shadow behind the light. This is not regression, it's resurfacing. You are not being punished for your growth. You're simply witnessing what was buried beneath your survival. Because every time you leap toward the future, God showed you every fragment of the past that never felt safe enough to speak starts to rise. This is the real quantum test. Not just visualizing new timelines, but being willing to hold space for every part of yourself that wasn't allowed to exist in the old one. The subconscious is not resisting because it hates you. It resists because it was programmed to protect you from abandonment, rejection, humiliation. It resists because once it learned, if I shrink, I stay safe. If I please, I stay accepted. If I go numb, I survive the pain. And now that you are healing, these protective parts don't vanish. They activate. They appear as fear, jealousy, insecurity, anxiety. Not to destroy you, but to ask, are we really safe to let go of who we used to be? This is what Carl Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Shadow work is not trendy. It's sacred. It is the process of seeing what survival forced you to silence. And in the realm of the spirit, this work is not optional. It is the path to wholeness. Here's the spiritual revelation. The shadow isn't trying to pull you backward. It's trying to join you. It's the orphaned self wanting to come home. You were never meant to ascend without your wounds. You were meant to redeem them. Not to drag your pain into the future, but to transmute it through love. When you suppress your shadow, you leak energy through internal war. But when you hold it in compassion, your signal becomes whole. You're no longer split between versions of self. You are integrated. And that's when your frequency stabilizes. Because the field doesn't respond to your performance. It responds to your coherence. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a breakthrough. Fear rises. Old thoughts emerge. But instead of suppressing them, you breathe. You turn inward. You say, I see you. I remember why you exist. But I am not that child anymore. I am not that prisoner. I am not that pleaser. I am the new creation. And you are welcome to walk with me, but you cannot lead. That is spiritual maturity. Not killing the parts of you that once kept you alive, but leading them with gentleness into a higher vibration. This is what it means to be whole. This is what it means to be ready. Not that you have no shadows, but that you've stopped abandoning them. What if emotional regulation isn't just self-care, but spiritual warfare? Many seek transformation through vision boards, affirmations, and declarations of faith. These are good tools, but when the body begins to shake, When panic rises without warning, when old fear tightens your breath, you need more than mindset. You need devotion. Because true alignment doesn't come from what you say once. It comes from what you return to again and again. Emotional regulation is not about suppressing emotion. It's about staying conscious inside it. It's about being the calm eye of the storm, the rooted soul in the chaos of transition. And that is holy work. Why? Because when fear rises, most people either collapse, react, or spiritual bypass. They run, they perform, they quote scripture while denying what their body is screaming. But God is not offended by your nervous system. He designed it, and He's inviting you not to shame it, but to shepherd it. Regulation is not perfection. It is presence. It's the daily practice of catching yourself before collapse. Of pausing long enough to remember, I'm not in danger. I'm in transition. It's the soft voice in your spirit that says, let's stay here. Let's breathe. Let's not run from what we're feeling. Let's lead ourselves back into peace. This isn't about raising your vibration to feel good. This is about anchoring your signals so deeply in truth that even when the waves come, you remain. You tremble, but you don't topple. You feel, but you don't flee. You observe, but you don't identify. Regulation is discipleship of the body, training your breath to stay open when the old story says, close, training your eyes to stay soft when the world taught you to harden, training your heart to remain available, even when fear begs you to shut down. This is the spiritual workout no one glamorizes. It doesn't look sexy. It doesn't look loud. But heaven sees it, and so does the quantum field. Because the field doesn't respond to euphoria. It responds to consistency. And every time you choose stillness over spiraling, breath over bracing, compassion over control, you are rewriting your signal. You're telling your body, I know what we were taught, but now we choose trust. We choose truth. We choose to stay with the light even when the dark feels louder. This is regulation as devotion, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. You're not just visualizing the new timeline, you're preparing your body to live there. The universe doesn't respond to your wish, it responds to your witness. The true shift happens in silence, not in grand manifestations, but in sacred decisions. Not when you speak your affirmations, but when you live your frequency. That moment when fear rises and you don't flinch. When the old identity whispers and you don't retreat. When doubt knocks and you open the door with peace in your eyes. That's when the field takes notice. Not because you performed, but because you stayed. This is what makes you trustworthy, not in the eyes of people, but in the architecture of energy itself. Because timelines don't require perfection. They require integrity. And what is quantum integrity? It's when your breath, your posture, your thoughts, and your actions are no longer in war with each other. It's when the prayer you whisper is also the choice you embody. The timeline you called in doesn't need you to shout louder. It needs you to return, again and again, to the version of you that already knows. I am safe here. I am chosen here. I am whole here. This is not about force. It's about frequency remembering itself. So the next time you wobble, return. The next time fear surges, return. The next time you wonder if the shift is working, return, because returning is the ritual. And ritual becomes reality. Your breakthrough wasn't loud, it was loyal. And you are no longer hoping for alignment. You are living as alignment. Not because the fear vanished, but because you finally chose to lead anyway. That's when heaven trusts you. That's when the quantum responds. And that's when the timeline becomes real. You're not here to visit your highest self. You're here to become it. It's easy to glimpse a future, to see visions during meditation, to whisper affirmations at sunrise. But embodiment is different. Embodiment means your nervous system holds the vision without trembling. It means your body becomes the altar where divine frequency dwells, not just during rituals, but in the ordinary, in the silent hours, in the traffic, in the tension, in the tenderness. Anyone can speak alignment, but few are willing to carry it. Why? Because it's heavy. Not because it's burdensome, but because it's real. It requires you to hold peace even when chaos offers comfort, to stay open when protection feels safer, to walk in grace when old wounds beg for defense. Embodiment is when you don't just believe and trust, you breathe it. When you don't just recite love, you respond with it. When you don't just visualize the timeline, you move as if it's already yours. This is no longer mental rehearsal. This is cellular worship. It's the kind of devotion where your habits align with your hope, where your frequency speaks louder than your mouth. And here's the mystery. When you embody your future, the field no longer treats it as potential. It reflects it as present. Your relationships shift. Your choices shift. Your posture shifts. Not because you forced anything, but because you became resonant with everything you were calling in. This is what Jesus modeled. He didn't manifest through striving. He moved with inner authority. I only do what I see the Father doing. That's alignment. That's embodiment. That's divine coherence. And now, it's your turn. Don't just ask for peace. Be the one who carries it into every room. Don't just wait for clarity. Be the one who moves clean even in the fog. Don't just declare transformation. Be the one whose presence transmits it, in silence, in stillness, in strength. Because when you become the embodiment, you no longer chase timelines. They begin to rise to meet you. You're not waiting for the shift anymore. You are the shift. If you've made it here, reading these words, breathing with your heart open, know this. You are already further than you think. The signal has been sent, not just into the universe, but into your own cells, your field, your future. Not by force, but by frequency. Not by trying to become someone else, but by remembering who you've always been beneath the noise. This is not the end of a journey. It's the recognition that you've always been walking beside the version of you who is already whole. And now, you've stopped running from them. You've turned inward. You've said, I'm ready. You've let go of performing. You've let go of chasing. You've let go of waiting for someone to confirm your worth. You've remembered, I am the one I was waiting for. This is quantum integrity. This is vibrational prayer. This is what the angels recognize when you walk into a room. Not your title, not your story, but your coherence. So breathe deep, walk slow, and trust that heaven has heard you, not because you screamed, but because you aligned. Your presence is now a transmitter. Your silence is now a signal. Your devotion is now a bridge between timelines. You are not asking the universe to respond. You are anchoring a new frequency. And the universe is already rearranging around it. So what now? Return, embody, repeat. And when the fear rises again, and it will, you won't panic. You'll pause, you'll smile, and you'll whisper, I know what this is. We've been here before, and we're still going. Because now, you are trustworthy with the timeline, and the timeline is already becoming real.